finding something to be happy and glad about. I want to welcome you to the Hope TV again, and certainly appreciate you for tuning in today. It's been a blessing to have you with us. As you know, we ramped up our media efforts at the House of Hope through the pandemic, and on March 19th, we aired our first pandemic show called Pastoring in the Pandemic. And from March 19th until today, we've had well over 5 million views of all our programming through our cumulative platforms. I want to thank you for that. We've come from one show to now 23 shows each week and growing. And so your support has been incredible. And I really, really, really appreciate you. Our aim is to try to touch people from a perspective of faith and family, finances, fitness, our faculties, fellowship, and even interject some fun along the way. We believe in being holistic in our programming approach, and so things that affect us spiritually, physically, emotionally, and even physically, those things are important to us. And so we're excited that you're here. Pray that you've been impacted in a powerful way. And if you logged on, please let us know where you're watching from. Please give us the city, the state, and the country. That's important to us. We want to know so that we can provide programming that's unique to your demographic. Very, very important. And I love you and I appreciate you. Our team is working diligently just to provide you with a daily dose of hope. And I hope that you have been inspired. We have some incredible people, some incredible hosts, some incredible producers who are all working diligently in order to provide you with this kind of content. Just kind of keep you motivated and encouraged and empowered during this season. If you're viewing through Apple TV, Roku TV, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, through the church website, my website, the church app, however you're viewing, thank you so much. We're even bringing on more platforms next week, and we're excited about that. We're making a huge announcement in a couple of days. So just thank you for all you're doing. And if you're watching through a platform where you're able to subscribe, comments, like, or send a link to somebody else, please do so right now. That's very, very important. And so I want to thank you for that. So thank you for following us. Please pause and follow us on all things social media. We established a platform just for the Hope TV a few weeks ago. And if you've not yet followed, you can follow us now on all things social media at the Hope TV. And make sure that you encourage others to do likewise. The show today is incredible because it's called Single in the City. It's for our singles who are 40 and under. And it's been impactful. This show is averaging between 50 to 100,000 people per episode every time it shows. And so that means a whole lot to us that people are really gravitating to this platform and enjoying and being empowered by it. Just having those conversations that are so powerful, and to hear perspective. It's so important that we hear different perspectives, and hearing your perspective is so important. I'm happy today about Single in the City because we're doing some new and some creative things with this particular show. And today we have family from the Atlanta University Center. Those people who know me know how much I love historically Black colleges and universities. And we have HBCU fam on the program today who's going to drop some serious knowledge, and I'm excited about that. The first is a brother. He's a Morehouse brother, and I'm excited. His name is Brandon Frame. He's doing some incredible programming in terms of mentorship. Just an inspirational brother. He's going to tell his story, but he's a Morehouse man. Y'all know you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell us much. And so I'm glad to have Big Frame here with us on the show today. What's up, Brandon? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm so honored and happy to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and share.
Well, the honor is absolutely mine. I appreciate you, sir. And last but not least, we have the producer. She's now the producer of this show, and man, has been doing some incredible things. She's from Bloomington, Illinois, and she's going to introduce herself more. But she is a Spelman sister now, and just incredible. She's a thinker and doing a lot of positive things, even in terms of creating content. And that's my sister, Kanisha K. McSwain. What's up, K. How are you doing?
Hey, Pastor Bro. I am great and happy to be here again.
Outstanding. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. So, Be Frame and Kanisha, we're going to get started. And again, thank you for taking our invitation and being a part of this. And so, Brandon, I want you to just tell us a little about yourself so the viewers can know who you are and the journey, your story, and what are you doing right now in terms of your life and your career.
Yes, so Brandon Frame, the founder and chief visionary officer of the Black Man Can Incorporated. I'm also in education. So I am the Deputy Director of Social Emotional Learning for the Urban Assembly based out of New York City. And I just kind of see myself as a role model, a scholar, and a gentleman. I'm a vessel for God's work. I believe ideas are spiritual children seated by God inside of us. And he places the people around us and the tools around us so that we can manifest those things into reality. So I'm just really doing what he wants me to do, and I'm appreciative of that, and I honor that.
Is New York your home?
New York is my home. Yes, I'm in the middle of the epicenter of it all. I'm in the Bronx right now, and it's been an interesting place to be in New York City, where you're so used to so many people, and I mean, while people are definitely out, at the park in terms of just getting out, but like it's just not as many people that you're used to, and it's sometimes it's still surreal to be that be the experience.
Wow, amazing. I want to talk more about that. Okay, can you tell us about yourself now too, please?
Well, hello to everybody who's watching for the first time. I feel like I've given this introduction a few times, but I am Keiki Kanisha from Bloomington, Illinois, as Pastor said. Been here in Atlanta since 2004. I came here to attend Spelman. As Pastor said, I work in sales 9 to 5. Outside of my 9 to 5, I have my hands in quite a bit. I am also what I would consider a visionary, just constantly being fed ideas. That come from God in an effort to inspire people, to motivate people. I have a platform that really caters more towards creatives, and positively influencing them and positively sharing their content. And I also have a company called Know Your Saints, which is apparel and costume jewelry in honor of your saints and soulmates. So I'm just really happy to be here.
Outstanding. As you can tell, it's going to be an incredible time. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Brandon, so how did you get to Morehouse? What made you choose Morehouse to come from New York to Morehouse? That's a long way. A lot of schools in between. Why the house?
Oh, definitely. And I guess I should note too, like, so I live in New York, but I'm originally from Connecticut. So I gotta, people say I don't rep Connecticut. They saw this, they would be like, word, that's how you do us now. So I represent Connecticut 860 in the building. How I got to Morehouse is a really interesting a story. I think I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. It starts with actually seeing Boys in the Hood. And in Boys in the Hood, at the end of the movie, Cuba Gooding Jr. goes to Morehouse. So that was my first introduction to Morehouse. And then from there, I attended a SAT prep class, and I was riding in the car with my best friend, Marcus Blackwell, and his dad said, my son isn't going anywhere but Morehouse. If he wants to go somewhere else, he has to pay for it. And I was like, I had that legacy aspect that people have with Morehouse and many private universities wasn't something that I was accustomed to. And so from there, I actually did some more research on Morehouse. And then I realized, like, wow, this is, where Martin Luther King went, Dr. David Satcher, Spike Lee, and the list goes on of prominent Black men. And I knew somewhere inside of me that there was a leader inside of me, and Morehouse is the place that makes Black male leaders. And that's what inspired me to want to go to Morehouse so that I can become that Black leader that I aspire to be.
Wow, right. Kanisha, I never asked you that question before, even though I've known you forever, feels like. Um, what made you choose Spelman?
So I actually came here to visit a deacon from my dad's church in Bloomington, and his family moved here to Atlanta, and we were very close to that family in particular. And so we came down as a family to visit them, and their daughter told me about Spelman. And just the first time I walked onto the campus, being from a predominantly white town, I think I was hugely impressed by just the vastness of Black women in our presence there, how beautiful the campus was. I saw like every shade, every, type of Black woman. And I could tell by the energy that they were all there to learn and to grow, and that they were doing something amazing on that campus. And it just really made me want to be a part. It really made me want to know more about the school and more about how I could attend that. Because just after that experience, I did my own research and just fell in love with it. Fell in love with the school and wanted to experience what it was like to be around girls that were like me, Black, who loved school, who had vision, who wanted to be successful, and didn't apply anywhere else. I was set on going to Spelman against everybody's recommendation to, apply to a couple of places. I said, this is where I want to go. I know God's going to do, and God did it.
That's great. Brandon, we talked about this. It's amazing how, AU Center is the epicenter for Black excellence, Black scholarship. It's a beautiful thing. I want to ask you a question. When you came to Morehouse, did you leave Connecticut with social consciousness? Because this is what we want to talk about somewhat in this show today. Um, how Morehouse developed, or did it develop, or did you come with a sense of social consciousness and social justice and liberation and the pursuit of equality? Was that something instilled in you as a child, or did you develop that at Morehouse?
I would say that I didn't. That happened more so at Morehouse because I think if we look at the time period, um, and you look at the 90s into the early 2000s, like the things that we have now and the things that we're seeing weren't necessarily as prevalent. Like there wasn't a Black Lives Matter, there wasn't all these different instances of uh, police brutality that was so publicized, right? So like I feel like through the 90s and in the early 2000s, like you were just kind of like almost like life was good, like you as a kid, right? As a teenager, you have your traditional conversations around, maybe, rappers, who's the best rapper, who's the best basketball player and stuff like that, but you went to the matters of the world. You weren't as politically motivated, but then and also part of that too is like, I mean, I went to college at 17, so at no point had I really thought about voting or my voice, right? And so when I get to college, it's like I'm actually now thinking about politics, right? Because I get a chance to vote for Barack Obama. That's the first president I even had an opportunity to actually vote for. And so now all the different matters of the world start to become important to me because I'm in an environment that's also fostering that. And thinking about women's voices with Spelman being right there, all these things start to play a factor as I became 17, 18, and then and so on. So it started while I was at Morehouse, and then I built on that. Then I'm happy that it did because I was in an intellectual place where people are having these conversations, and you have what's also beautiful is that it's a place where there's Black people from all over the world. And so what you learn, like coming from up north, you're like, you think about how people up north think, right? And so then I'm like, I didn't think about how people from Alabama or Tennessee think. I didn't think about how people from California think. And then also seeing the diaspora, like how diverse we are, part depending on where we come from in the country, and that like being Black is not monolithic, right? So like in your head, you think everybody from New York, right? And then you get down south and you're like, nah, everybody not like that. Different music, they talk different. So I was so appreciative of the opportunity to be in a space where I saw how diverse Black people were in our perspectives, and then learn to respect those perspectives, even if you're a different skin color than me, as well as gender.
That's great. And Kanisha, I want to ask you the same question, Kiki, because you're in Bloomington, predominantly white place.
Mm-hmm.
You're very heavily involved in the music scene, the church scene. Your dad is a preacher, so you learn principles of faith. But what about your consciousness, politics, and your thoughts about, our race and our people? I'm ask you the same question.
So I think I guess, blessing for me growing up as in a church with my dad being a pastor, Bloomington is one of those transitional places where transplant places, most people are there to work at State Farm, which is where the headquarters are. And so and there are two universities there, Illinois State University and Illinois Wesleyan. And I like to think that my dad had like the pop-in church. It was like the popular church for the college students to come to. And so all of the Black college students and the Black families that were moving to Bloomington for State Farm, many of them attended my dad's church. And what that allowed for me to see, even though at school I saw mostly white people or non-blacks, didn't really have any Black teachers or anything like that. When I went to church on Sunday, my church family were all scholarly, educated, Black people, Greek organizations here and there. I got to see us in a different light. But if I have to say that any one thing really shaped my Blackness, I would say that it was being able to go to inner city Chicago all of the time growing up. Both of my parents are from there. They would take us and just drop us off in Chicago on the west side. And it was a totally different world. You know, you get to really experience the culture of Black people, how we talk. And even in a city like Chicago, depending on what side you're on of the city, you have different cultures. People do the percolator differently. They they cook differently. They speak differently, and it just shapes you and allows you to appreciate our culture so much. When Kanye West talks about summertime shy, I know that feeling. It's the windows up in the hood and everybody's grandparents are playing some Motown, you know, dusty as we call them, and all the kids are out double dutching or playing. It's just a vibe, you know, and it made me appreciate my Blackness so much that I took it back to Bloomington and I started to question the ways in which I was trying to fit in with my white community that I wasn't even aware of. Like right now, I have weave in my hair, right? But everybody knows, you know, I rock my natural all the time. That transition happened for me in high school where I was like, what's wrong with my hair? You know what I mean? Like it's okay to want to do whatever you want to do, but why do I run away from my actual hair, you know? And started to rock my natural, got really heavy into poetry. I mean, I went like in deep to consciousness and what it meant to be Black in America. And I guess I saturated myself in it because of where I was. I didn't have a lot of it around me, and it made me comfortable to kind of stand up and say, I'm a Black girl, you know, I'm happy to be Black. And coming to Spelman really just encouraged that the more, just meeting, as Brandon said, and as you know, so many different types of Black women and Black people, and not just from the States, but around the world. One of my closest girlfriends is from Trinidad and Tobago. And just knowing, you know, that we are endless, you know, and it's just amazing to me. And so I think it would have to do with sort of that Black and white, I hate to be so direct, of Bloomington and inner city Chicago, and then still having to live in that environment and also coming to Spelman and experiencing Spelman and the city of Atlanta, you know, which is also was eye opening for me when I got here. So
Outstanding. You know, Brandon, it's powerful to see how, you know, the stories are different, but they're similar in so many ways. Brandon, you run an organization. You come to Morehouse, leave Connecticut, and now you're in the Bronx. You run an organization, literally 3,500 young people that you're mentoring. I mean, just amazing. That kind of, you know, organization, that type of dirt, I mean, that type of vision. You know, what gave you the vision and the burden and the passion to get into mentorship? I want to hear about that. You know, did you have that growing up? What birthed your organization? And talk a little bit about what you do in your organization.
Yeah, I think growing up, there were different instances from, you know, my basketball coach asking me to mentor, you know, younger players, or like signing up for a mentoring program in high school to go over to the middle school. But the real catalyst behind this is while I was at Morehouse, I started a mentoring program on the east side of Atlanta at Charles R. Drew Charter School. And while I was there, that's when I saw like this love or passion for education, youth development, mentoring. And so well, MK Asante is one of my favorite scholars, and he says once you make an observation, you have an obligation. And so I made an observation that Black boys and men need to see positive images of themselves and need to have their stories told. And so therefore, I have an obligation to create it. And so from there, in April of 2010, through my experiences in Morehouse and hearing my brothers and their experiences, and then also talking with mentees that were in the mentoring program, I really saw like, okay, my job here again is that obligation to create the Black men can, to create a sole place that people can go and see what Black men and boys can do. And so from there, we did that in 2010, and then over these last 10 years, it has grown into a mentoring. It is like really think about how powerful God is, because when I started a blog in 2010, and when you start a blog, you want to get .com. footsteps were. And so he knew that in 7 years we would be a nonprofit organization and we would need .org. And then we eventually got .com, and we have the .com site as well. But like God knew like that, like I said, he gave me this vision, this idea, and then he gave me the tools around. So over the years, we just manifested into mentoring, and then we have our digital community, and then we have our program, Black Man Can Awards, and the Black Man Can Does Hair Too, and all these different things to showcase what Black men and boys can do. And so, but it all started from, once you make an observation, you have an obligation.
Wow, man, you talked about it. That's a whole lot. That's a very loaded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get it in a concise format, but that's heavy. Man, are there any organizations similar to that in your vicinity?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have there's small organizations inside of schools here all throughout New York City. There's boys groups inside of schools, which we help with schools in terms of from a consulting capacity to help them put the structures and systems in place to have a functioning program. Then you have your larger ones, 100 Black Men of America. And the list goes on. I could go, but there's so many different people, and I think one thing was important for us is to create the media side of what we do so that we can highlight everything that's happening, right? We sometimes think things are happening in silos and islands of success. And so the Black Man Can be a conduit to connect those islands of success, share best practices so that we can create collective and sustainable change for our communities.
Man, so is it a particular age group in terms of the kids that you mentor?
We focus primarily on middle school and high school. I wrote a children's book with a friend of mine, Tanae Deneen Eskridge, called My First Tie. And so now we also do elementary school, not necessarily mentoring, but we'll go into schools with men or by myself, read to students, male and female, and give them the book and the tie. And it's a really great experience. And it's really interesting seeing boys and girls do ties, because like boys, on average, boys, when they tie at one time, they're good. I don't want to do it no more. The young ladies, when you show them the tie, they're like, it's too long, it's too short. They want to get it perfect, and it's just always interesting, working with a second or third grader and already like kind of like the development. I think about myself as a grown man sometimes, and I'm like, once it's done, it's done. Where it's like, a woman may be like, nah, it's not done. It's not right.
KK, I want you to talk about the Know Your Saints. I was talking to one of our producers the other day. We had an incredible conversation. I was doing a Bible study, I think 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about the Archangel Michael in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and and the nuances, and I guess the history and some of the theology behind Archangel Michael. And he shared with me that when he was Catholic, and when he went through all of the all of his process of confirmation, how that was assigned to him as his angel, and how he was given artifacts or images to remind him that Michael would be with him all the time. And I wanted to mention that to you last time we talked, but it slipped my mind about how in Catholicism they assign patron saints to individuals that they may pray to or believe on, that the spirit is there to kind of cultivate and remind and warn and intercede for them, et cetera, et cetera. But when I didn't really delve into your concept, but I saw some similarities, I think, just in the spirit of Know Your Saints versus what happens in Catholicism. So can you talk about that? Because I think that's a powerful piece for me.
Yeah, so I randomly think about, or I don't want to say randomly, I feel like God gives me ideas from time to time, and I'm what you call an executor. If I can figure out a way to get it done, I'm going to get it done. So I just had this idea a few years ago, that I really needed to venture off into an additional stream of revenue, and I wanted to focus on an e-commerce business, something that I could sell online. And I played with a lot of different ideas and settled in on costume jewelry. Believe it or not, I never really wore jewelry heavily before I started Know Your Saints. And what really inspired me to go the route of costume jewelry was getting off a plane in Miami. There was this little store in the airport, and everything was glittering. So I was just like pulled into the store against my will. No. Went into the store, bought up a whole bunch of jewelry, and I didn't even really pay attention to the pieces as closely as I maybe should have until I got home and saw that they were Saint Christopher and the Virgin Mary and the crucifix and all these like religiously themed pieces. And I guess the wheels just started turning for me about how growing up, I noticed all of my Catholic friends, a lot of my Hispanic friends, they often had these pieces with them all of the time. And so just like you were saying, I did all of my research, watched countless YouTube. I mean, I just binged YouTube videos about the different saints and why they were sainted and what their cause is on the earth, and did a lot of research around it. And what it came down to for me was that I wanted to be able to give people something, or to sell something that meant something to people, that had some significant value. And why not speak to those people who either are real saints, like Saint Michael or Saint Christopher, these people who we really identify in sainthood, or the people in our lives who present themselves or show up for us as saints and soulmates. So I played around with that idea, did a lot of research on, how to get that project off of the ground and what it would mean to sort of highlight those individuals myself. Have a piece that represents a grandmother and that love. Have a piece that represents the love of your mother. Have a piece that represents, that fighter in your life, whoever fights for you, or cancer survivors, or, just all of these different ways that our saints and soulmates show up for us. And what it ended up turning into was just this vast celebration and this ability for people to keep the ones that they love and cherish with them always. So that it circles right back to the idea that you were speaking about earlier. I often say, know your saints and keep them with you always. You wear the necklaces in honor of your mother or in honor of whoever that person is that you admire, and the apparel is the same. All of the shirts have a meaning. The hoodies speak to something specifically. So it was really just birthed out of the concept that we want to be able to carry our saints and soulmates with us all of the time. And they are reminders. I have people, hit me up and say, hey, I literally think to pray every time I look at my Matthew, 6 and 9 piece. It reminds me to say a prayer for that day, or I'm wearing this today in honor of my mom, or I'm wearing this in honor of, my husband, or whatever that meaning is, or that significant person, whoever that significant person is. I'm seeing that people are celebrating them and being able to keep them with them on a day-to-day basis by way of Know Your Saints. So that's, exactly where it came from.
It's amazing because I think you did all this prior to the death of your father, almost 2 years
Hmm.
ago. Is that correct? And that's what's so
Yes.
heavy
Hmm.
about it. Yeah, that's what's so heavy about it. Like, we just celebrated Mother's Day. And as my mom, sister, best friend from college, and godmother all died 4 years ago, all within 30 days. So days like Mother's Day, it's my fourth Mother's Day without my mom, this past weekend, and I still kind of struggle somewhat. But just to memorialize the memory like that, to put in that type of context, to know that I've got something I can carry. Because sometimes I feel like my mother talks to me all the time now, that I
Yes,
still hear the voice and get lessons. And so to take that from Catholicism to make it so practical, it's such a beautiful thing. And I think it can help people even in the grieving process. Just to hear you talk about it,
absolutely.
and you're doing it
Absolutely.
just to you're doing what you're doing, but that's heavy in terms of helping people to process your grief and the feelings of loss, and to have something connected to you that's a reminder. Have you? I know it started out as just something being entrepreneurial for you, but have you benefited from it? Has it impacted you even in terms of your father's transition? How has Know Your Saints impacted you since your father's transition?
It's, I mean, I can't even begin to explain it to you because it's sort of a constant reinforcement of who he was and what he stood for. And he actually helped me pick the name. I had written down quite a few
Wow.
different names, and he was just gotten on hospice. He had just got placed on hospice at that time. And he and I were just talking and going back and forth. And I guess it just hit him. He just said, how about Know Your Saints? And it made so much sense to use that name. And so I've benefited from the concept of Know Your Saints after Daddy has gone, just because he gave me the name, and it's such a perfect name for the brand, but also because I am constantly reminded of the fact that he is still here with me and that I can keep him with me in spirit, because I'm constantly reading these messages from my customers and constantly, picking the items and packaging everything. And it is just a reminder that once people leave this shell of a body, their spirit and their voice, even, their love still remains here with you. And you can celebrate that. It's hard sometimes, but you can celebrate that, and that's what I aim to help people do.
That's awesome. I want to come back and talk about that because I think that a lot of people like me and like you who've been going through grief, and I'm still grieving, and I'm okay with saying that. I never thought I would say that 5 years ago, or when I would see people in mourning during special days, I didn't understand it. But after my mom's death and my sister's death, I mean, just in short order, it's just giving a sensitivity, and I think that can be so helpful. It's deeper
Yes.
than just a business or jewelry. That's
Yes.
cathartic for the heart. I want to thank you for that, for sharing that. And with that being said, Brendan, I think it's amazing when we talk about knowing your saints and those who are deceased and those memories and the legacies that we leave behind. I want to add to sainthood, if you just allow me for our conversation. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's heavy. Um, Saints and soulmates. I think people can get that, and we will definitely encourage the viewers to get that. Somebody, that's a great gift to give. That's an incredible gift to give to somebody. And with that being said, I think we've had some saints really amongst us, and I want to, in many ways, our African American community and people around the world have kind of given them sainthood status. People like Trayvon Martin and Tamir
Mm.
Rice and Sandra Bland and now Arbery. For me, what they represent, the legacy and how their blood still speaks. And I think a lot of what you're doing in terms of mentorship there in the Bronx, in New York. I want to ask you a question in terms of what you're doing for young kids there, but also in terms of your belief system. How has how have you been impacted? How have you been impacted by the cases of brutality and seemingly state-sponsored violence against black and brown people, men and women? How has it impacted you as a man? How has it impacted you, even in terms of perhaps your dating or your relational choices? Have you been impacted to that regard by those things, by those saints?
Yeah. I would say that it impacts me just because, like, that the that you can't change anything because it's based off the color of your skin, and that's something that's so hard to swallow. Knowing that, like if I'm driving and there's a police officer behind me, I feel some type of way. Like you can't, as a black man, you cannot feel comfortable when everyone's behind you. Like, it just automatically causes you to feel some type of way. So I think that's how it really impacts me, and then even trying to have that conversation with young men, and try to prepare them, but you can't really be prepared. Like, there's too many examples that show, like, why are we even having this conversation? Like, I can give you some basic steps that you should follow, but there's a possibility that won't actually keep you alive, right? And I think there's so much struggle in having that conversation and knowing that to be the truth. In regards to, from a dating aspect of things, I think all these examples for me show that I I already feel this. I already have felt that way, but I know that, like, I can't be with anyone else but a black woman. And I've always felt that way, but these examples highlight that because only a black woman will be able to understand where I'm coming from when I express my concern, or how it makes me feel emotionally, and understand, right? And I know that I need that. I need that, somebody who's lock in step with me, who stands in the gap with me, and simultaneously I can do the same for her, because I know that the instances that happen to Black women, which don't necessarily always get as much notoriety, and not always marching, is also evident that I need to stand in the gap with Black women, right? And honor, salute, and hear their voices, because it's almost double for them. It's a double strike when stuff like this happens to them. And it's kind of like, I mean, you don't see the same marches and sometimes the same media coverage, right? So I think that that right there is how it heightens it for me from a dating aspect. It just reminds, it's constantly reminding me why I need to marry a Black woman and raise a Black family. That's the most important thing that I can do, aside from any accomplishments that I may have.
You know, it's interesting you said that about the things that you're teaching the boys and the kids that you're mentoring. You know, my son is at Morehouse, and his first semester there, he and some of his friends went after the open night of basketball season. They went to get something to eat right off of Punts. Went to Zaxby's after the opening night. They literally leave out of the drive-through lane. They turn left, following the GPS. As soon as they turn left, less than 10 yards after pulling onto the street, four gunmen fire over 20 bullets into the automobile, and so they hurriedly go back to campus, get back to campus, car riddled with bullets, 5 guys in the car, and they call the police on the way back to campus, get to Morehouse campus, get there, surrounded by a few white cops. You know, I get up to the school. Some of them are handcuffed in police cars, and for the first time, I felt a sense of helplessness. They're on the campus of Morehouse. These are great students, freshmen. They've been shot at 20 plus times. I get there trying to find out what's going on with some other parents, and just the vitriol and the tone and tone of the conversation, it made me feel so helpless. Like, did I prepare him for his engagement with law enforcement? Have I failed? I mean, because here I am telling him to call the police because I can help him. Until I get there, I'm 35 minutes away, and once I get there, the type of treatment was repulsive. So my question to you, when you talked about the things you're trying to train to teach the young people that you're mentoring, your mentees, what do you say to them? What advice do you give? How have you taught them in terms of engaging law enforcement? Because I think that can be helpful to other people who are mentoring people or single parents who may be watching. What do you teach the kids to do in cases of law enforcement interaction?
We kind of teaching them the basics, and many of the basics, but it's kind of like there is no other way. Like, you keep both hands on the steering wheel, you tell them what you're reaching for. And multiple times we actually bring in law enforcement that looks like them to have that conversation. Those conversations are always really interesting to be had, because it's like, here is a man who looks like you, who cares about you, but he's also wearing a uniform that you're fearful of. But I think it's still, what's important to do is create that community policing environment. So a lot of times, just like it's like schools, and same thing with education, schools and then police is like people who are policing the communities or even educating in the communities, right, are not necessarily living in the communities, right? And so it's important to opportunities for community policing to happen. So I think, in some places we've tried to make sure that we bring in law enforcement from those particular communities. And when you create that, now I know that that's Jamal, right? So even if something happens, like that's Jamal. That's not a black 6'5" black man, white tee, blue jeans, and black and white sneakers, right? It's Jamal. And so I think when those things take place, it allows for the community to happen. And when you can have community, that makes policing something that is not used as and not seen as a negative or fearful thing, but an aid and protect and serve, which is what they want to actually come across as.
That's great. Okay, let me ask you that question in terms of your consciousness. How have you been affected, even relationally, in terms of all the injustices? Is it important for you to date somebody potentially who has the same type of social consciousness as you? The deal breaker, can you engage somebody like that in a serious relationship and they don't see things through the same social lenses that you see them?
Well, I think that there's um a known fact that Black women, I know some people try to say it's not true, but we really go up for Black men. We carry you guys so close to our hearts, just as a whole. And so anytime something happens to a Black man, it hugely impacts me, whether I know him or not, and especially if it's in a case where he's treated unfairly, or he's lost his life. So in situations like this, with the death of not just Black men but Black women as well, it it creates a fear, an aura of fear, if I'm honest, around me, that I'm not comfortable with. I don't love not feeling safe when a cop car pulls behind me. I don't love if I'm out on a date and my date gets out of the car to go into the gas station. Um, I have had friends or guys I've dated, like, experience being shot at or robbed or all of these things, and it just creates a fear that just compounds and compounds and compounds, even outside of police brutality. You're just constantly always worried about the Black men in your life. you know if they go out of the house, will they come back in the house? My brothers, I call them all the time, and my youngest all of the time, and just tell him, keep your head on straight, don't do anything that would escalate a situation. And why would I have to tell him that if he's, engaging with the police, who are here to protect and serve? But it is a real conversation that I have to have. And I think because of the type of men that I date, or the type of men that I even that are even in my community that I would be around, I think it would be really difficult to meet someone who wouldn't share the same sentiments. I would really have to work a little bit to find a guy who didn't, because of the community that's already around me. So it is just a constant thought. It's a constant prayer, that's going up all of the time for Black men in this country. And it's the question of, do I want to bring a Black man into this country, or Black children into this world, that does not value their lives? Do I want to put them in that situation while I have the choice still? That's something that I think about probably more than not. When I think about having children, what type of world am I bringing them into? And is that fair? Is that something I want to do right now? And I just think it's very important that we take time to cleanse ourselves psychologically, to pay attention to the things that we're taking in, to guard our gates, as I always say. With social media, it's like one thing after the other, one death after another, and you're either going to get numb, which is unhealthy, or you can become super anxious, which is also unhealthy. And I think we just really have to, or I try my best to just make sure that I'm okay. You think just because you don't know these people, you're not impacted, but you are. And so to just constantly guarding my gates and making sure I'm okay. But it's absolutely difficult to be a Black woman in this country and having to see what not just our Black men go through, but what we go through as well, either directly or indirectly.
Wow. You guys are both incredible, and what you're offering is amazing. Brandon, tell us how we can support you. I'm gonna make sure we sponsor something and send you something to your organization. So tell us how we can support you, Brandon. Yeah, I'm gonna get you something this week.
All right. I mean, you can donate to the Black Man Can through www.theblackmancan.org. We also have our merchandise as well, which can be found at www.theblackmancan.com. And we're always just looking for people that can continue to push our mission and vision forward. So through those both the .com or the .org, you can see all of those things. Also have my children's book, My First Tie. So anybody's interested in that, I can give information for that. It's a really popular book. People really love it. It's about little Dell and his journey to tie his tie for the first time with his dad.
Outstanding. Kanisha, okay, can you tell us how we can support you?
There are a couple of ways you can support me. KnowYourSaints.com. That's KnowYourSaints.com. You can purchase jewelry and apparel there for yourself or for your saints and soulmates. I also have a podcast called The Cosign with a K. the Cosign podcast. You can find it on all of the podcast platforms as well as on keikispeaks.com.
Hey, you guys have been incredible. Thanks for sharing. So insightful, so substantive. I pray God's blessing on everything that you're doing, and everything that you touch. That God will continue to crown with abundant favor, success, and increase. You've been a blessing. Thank you so much for being a part. Family, you've been watching this episode of Single in the City of Hope TV. Brandon Frame of The Black Man Can and K Key of Know Your Saints. They've offered a lot of insight. Let's support them, get behind them. They're doing some incredible work. Be encouraged. Know you can. And if you know that God has given you a power, love, and a sound mind. We're going to make it some tough times, but we'll get through this. Always remember this: if you be good to God, God will be good to you. Until next time, peace. You've been watching Hope TV. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.